Welcome to Race Talk. We're so glad to have you guys here tonight. We are the show in which we learn the issues that affect the human race together and the cultures within it. We are excited to get to our program today. There's lots of great information that is here on tap for everyone. First, I'd like for my co-host to introduce himself too.
Hi, I'm Wheeler Castaneda, and I am traveling. I'm back in Kentucky now. Then I'll be in Indiana probably in the next show, and then eventually I'll make my way back to Brooklyn. But can't tear myself away from all you wonderful people.
He just likes to take the show on the road, so we
I do.
appreciate him. Wheeler, you have some news for us this week?
Absolutely. I have a few things I'd like to go over really quickly before you introduce our guest tonight, who I'm excited to have on the show. Just really quickly, things I'm sure you've already heard of, but I thought that were pretty significant to go over again, just in case you hadn't. The three officers in Wilmington, North Carolina, who were fired after making racist comments, James Gilmore, Kevin Piner, and Corporal Jesse Moore, were all caught on tape making. These are police officers. Were all caught on tape making extremely racist and threatening remarks. One of the officers said that he was ready for a civil war against the black people. Moore and Piner were also said to be captured using the N-word multiple times, and they referred to anti-racist protesters as worshiping blacks. The officers confirmed that these were in fact their voices. They did not deny the fact that they said what they said or that it was them on the tape. Piner, he says that he goes on to say, we are just going to go out and start slaughtering them effing N-words. He also says that that we need a civil war to wipe them off the effing map. That'll put them back 4 or 5 generations. So these officers were fired after these comments. But just again to show you how much work we still need and reforming the police departments, if these are the types of people that we do have in there, to get them out and get people in that will serve to protect the entire community, not just some of the community. The next one I have is regarding Elijah McClain. This actually happened last August. Elijah McClain was a 23-year-old African American, very gentle soul. There's video of him actually. He self-taught. He played the violin. He was self-taught, and he would go to cat shelters and play the violin for cats in the shelter. He said that it soothed them and it helped calm them. This is the kind of person we're talking about. Well, in August, he had a ski mask on. His sister said that the ski mask was because he's anemic and he gets really cold, and he was on his way to a convenience store not far from his house to purchase an iced tea for his brother. On the way back from the convenience store, walking home, someone had called 911 on Elijah and saying that there was a suspicious-looking person in the neighborhood. Elijah was not armed. He had no weapons on him. The officers approached him. They did say that he was resisting arrest. One of the officers said that Elijah reached for their gun. There's no proof of this. There's no the body cam footage actually came out a few months after the incident happened. You can hear Elijah on the tape, saying, I've done nothing wrong. He also says, I can't breathe. They put him in one of those now illegal chokeholds. He actually ends up vomiting because he couldn't breathe, and he apologizes to the officers. He said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Hey,
some of the footage.
Can I interject for a second there with you,
Wheeler? Absolutely. Go ahead.
Let me. My video doesn't want to pop in there for the moment. I'll see if I can fix that before the end of the show. But I just wanted to take a second real quick to read his last words, because it was caught on the body cam. And I think it's real important that people understand, all the people out there that are saying, if you just don't resist and if you just do the right thing, this couldn't happen to you. They always want to blame the person on the ground. And I think we really need to hear his last words in their complete paragraph. So let me just read them real quick for anybody who's listening to really understand what was going through this boy's mind as and I say boy, he was an adult, but he was still a young man. He was blossoming into his prime. He was figuring out his place in the world. This is a guy who went to the shelter on his break from massage therapy to play violin to cats and dogs because he felt like they were sad. Okay, his last words: "I can't breathe. I have my ID right here. My name's Elijah McClain. That's my house. I was just going home. I'm an introvert. I'm just different. That's all. I'm so sorry. I have no gun. I don't do that stuff. I don't do any fighting. Why are you attacking me? I don't even kill flies. I don't eat meat, but I don't judge people. I don't judge people who do eat meat. Forgive me. All I was trying to do was become better. I will do it. I will do anything. Sacrifice my identity. I'll do it. You all are phenomenal. You are beautiful and I love you. Try to forgive me. I'm a mood Gemini. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ow, that really hurt. You all are very strong. Teamwork makes the dream work." And here's where he starts crying, and I'm having a hard time reading it. "Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do that. I just can't breathe correctly." And then he vomits and passes out. And those are his last words. And I think it's real important for people to understand that, because that's not okay.
No, it isn't. Thank you, Michael, for reading that version. I didn't find the full version of it, so I'm glad that you found the full version and were able to read that. That's the one I was looking for. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and I do think that's extremely important to show, you know, just the kind of character that he had, and that he was not a threat at all to anybody.
He was a vegetarian. That's what he was referring to. He didn't even want to eat meat because he loved animals. This man was no threat to anybody.
No, not at all. And not surprisingly, the officers were acquitted of all wrongdoing. They are I'm not sure if they're reopening the case, but they're taking a second look at it because of all the attention that all the great attention that the public is or the pressure the public is putting on for officers to do better and to reopen some of these cases. So,
and I have two footnotes real quick before you move on. I'm sorry, I just thought about this when you brought it up. Number one, there was recently a vigil held in his memoriam, and it was in a public park, and everybody there was observing social distancing, was wearing masks, and nobody was fighting. Nobody was even protesting. They were listening to a violin concert to remember his memory. And I encourage everybody who doesn't believe this is a real problem in America today to go Google it and look up the camera footage, because as people are sitting listening to the violin, cops in full riot gear, policemen and women in full riot gear, in a full line, storm into the park to shut down a memorial service, push everybody out of the way, and proceed to use pepper spray on families. There were children there. This was not a grown protest turning into a looting or anything like that you could try and say. You can go look at the video for yourself and see what it looked like. And there's multiple angles, multiple people. And the other footnote I have on this that really drives the point home for anybody who thinks that this isn't a systemic problem. This happened in Aurora, Colorado. And if anybody remembers a really significant event that happened in Aurora, Colorado a little while ago, there was a young Caucasian male who stormed a theater and killed 13 people. That man was arrested alive without incident. Why is a man who kills 13 people in a crowded movie theater taken alive without incident? But here you have a man who happens to be black walking down the street, dead, doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I've even read that they stopped, and it was James Holmes that you're referring to in the Aurora, Colorado.
Yes, thank you.
Walked into the movie theater, and I have down that 12, 13 people that were killed, and I even read an article about them stopping to get him Burger King at one point, the officers. I'm not 100% sure how accurate that is, but I know I did read that in an article that I found online from a newspaper, not just an article out there. Anything else, Michael? Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was just it. I think that this is such a sad case, and it's so painful to read his words, and it's even worse to go and listen to it on the body cam footage. I mean, it's out there. You can't even tell me this is a media spin. And I really just hope, and I encourage people who have any doubts about the reality of this situation, do your own research. Go and watch the videos. Watch the body cam footage of what happened to this man. Go and watch the news coverage of what happened to James Holmes. Compare the two incidents. Do it for yourself. Don't let the news tell you what you want to believe. Go do it for yourself, and then go and watch the firsthand videos of the people trying to remember this gentle soul, to pay their last respects to a man that didn't need to be dead for any reason at all.
Right.
And watch how the state responds with the police arm. Just go ahead and watch. Yeah. I challenge anybody to come in, and I welcome an open discussion with anybody who thinks that they can point out something that I'm missing or that we're missing. Because I think any intelligent, critical thinking adult can look at that and arrive to a pretty logical conclusion as to what's going on. And there's something wrong.
Absolutely.
That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Wheeler.
No, great. I'm happy to, I love the discussion. Like the back and forth, but you're right. I mean, I did see I did read about the pepper spraying of the people playing violin in his honor, which is, I mean, they were, like you said, observing social distance. They were doing all the right things, yet they were pepper sprayed for nothing, absolutely nothing. The last thing I do want to get to, because I do want to bring on our guest, is something that hits home for me because I live in New York City. I live in Brooklyn. It was just announced that the NYPD has slashed their department budget by $1 billion, and they're going to reallocate a lot of that money to the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Hygiene, and the Department of Homeless Services. So they are shifting the money to youth programs to support the young people. It was even said that they don't need the youth. They don't need to be policed. They need to be reached and supported. And there's also another $500 million that they said they're going to use to create rec centers and positive places for people in the community to go, young people to go, and as well as they wanted to create broadband access to all people in public housing. So this money that's being reallocated from the $1.5 billion that was slashed from the police department, which has a $6 billion budget and employs 55,000 officers, is going to some good. It's going to programs that will build up the community rather than to police the community. And that was made really clear on the report that I read, which is it's exciting in the sense that it's happening. And I don't think without all this public attention, it would have happened. There's also people, on the side saying, it's not enough money. And then some people saying it's too much money. But real quick, and then we can get started with our guest. They reallocated $354 million to other agencies like the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Hygiene, and the Department of Homeless Services. And they're going to move $500 million to badly needed infrastructure, which is, again, something that I think is extremely necessary in this country because our infrastructure, not to get off topic, is faltering a lot, and we do need money reallocated to that so that we can, have a safe society to live in, physically safe society to live in, if that makes sense. So, all right. If there's not anything else, I'll have Mr. Darnell introduce our guest tonight.
Yes, so that was a lot of heavy news for this particular episode. And I just want to remind you again of the show's purpose again is that we're here to learn about the issues together, though they may be uncomfortable. But not only to be aware of these issues, but to come up with solutions together, because we all are in this together. And that's why we bring up these issues, so you can understand it's not just a police problem, it's not just African-American problem, but it's an us problem. And we all have to know about it, and we all have to decide that we're going to battle against it. And the last thing to say about this, I know that some viewers might feel even more uncomfortable and think that this is police bashing. We're just reporting what has happened, and I just want to continue to remind you how we have the utmost respect for awesome law-abiding officers, because if 100%. They're a law-abiding officer, then they're going to make sure that others are doing that in a way that everyone is safe, just as if I had a friend over the other day who's a state trooper, and respect him like crazy, and he's a great guy. So please, Don't make this anything else than what it is, reporting of the news, okay? All right, so.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yes, sir. So we're going to go ahead and get to our topic today, which we're really dealing with is economic literacy, not only in the African American community, but this affects everyone that is part of the human race here in America. And so our guest that I'm bringing on here, Defronderick Neal, which we like to call just Old Fron, is going to come and share with us some of the issues and then some tips. Again, these tips not only are going to be beneficial to those who are in the African American community, but also for anyone else who's viewing tonight. This is something that can be great key takeaways to improve your life too. So please welcome with us Fron tonight. Hey, Fron.
Hey, how's it going? How are you?
Man, it's great. We're so glad to have you on here, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We know that you originally would be here in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I'm at, and where our producer Michael is at, but you're not there right now. Where are you at?
I'm actually at Columbia, South Carolina. I am still working, but I wanted to do a vacation. The beautiful part about it is that my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they moved into their house this past weekend, and we were here to offer a helping hand and kind of bring them in, right? So it's kind of right along the right up the alley of what we're going to talk about this evening. But it is a privilege and an honor to be on this show, on this podcast. And I'm going to say just one thing and I'm going to leave it alone. But, I appreciate you guys for the passion that you have. Rainwater, you almost took me to a place because, I too feel where you're coming from. And if you have that level of compassion, in dealing with people that you don't know, I know that amongst friends, if you will, I just really, really thank you. I just put it to you like that. So
anytime. I believe that we are all part of one race. That is the human race. And
Absolutely.
Anybody who disagrees with that notion, I fully encourage to go and do your own research. Don't listen to what the news has to say. Don't listen to what people who have hate in their heart have to say. Go and look at what science has to say, and you will find very quickly that race is a socially created construct. There is no biology to support the idea of race. We made that idea up, and it's our job to recognize it's a destructive idea, and we need to take it back down, tear it away, and recognize there's only one humanity. There's only one group. We're all in the same boat together, period.
Thanks, brother.
I love you guys.
I love you too, man.
Love you too. So financial literacy.
Yes, sir.
We know that when talking about financial literacy, we're talking about that knowledge that empowers an individual to be able to control their financial life and to positively contribute to the economy, for the community, and for themselves. So what is your role as someone dealing with the financial industry?
Well, I work as a loan originator, loan officer. There's a couple of titles for us, but pretty much I help people acquire the financing to get in their house. I get them qualified to make sure that they're stable enough to acquire any type of real estate, but mainly single family residence homes. So.
Awesome. So then you're in a position in which when you've helped someone, it's not only probably beneficial to them, of course we know it is, but it's something that probably blesses you too. Why would that be the case?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of people, everybody has to go and keep their lights on, if you will. Everybody goes and make a a finance, yes. Do I get paid? Yes. However, there is, it comes from my own story, you know what I mean? And I was one of the people that were, really having tough time in understanding the market, understanding how to acquire a house, and went through a couple financial issues along the way. But all of the work that was involved into the house buying process, it basically, for that 30 seconds that I gave my wife, the joy of being approved for the largest investment, only second to my kids, it's an indescribable feeling. And for me, I wanted everyone else to feel that way. So with that being said, I wanted to go, I wanted to work. I wanted to start doing seminar classes. I wanted to go and give inside tips on what it is to do and what it is not to do in acquiring a house.
Which is a part of economic literacy, because I know redlining, one of the issues we're going to deal with briefly tonight, was something in which did affect minorities being able to even move into certain neighborhoods and purchase homes and all of that, and some of the other financial implications with it. But we know that knowledge is power. So to have good financial or economic literacy is something in which can bless the African-American community and others. So what do you believe the impact has been as far as the African-American community being illiterate in this area?
I think that the impact is great. As a matter of fact, the Central Indiana Community Foundation says that we're ranked 46th in the U.S. as far as not having the economic to move away from having being better than our parents. Our offspring are not being better than our parents. So with that being said, a lot of it comes from just a lack of education. And this comes, and this as a point, there is a study that's out there that talks about who we are as Indianapolis. We're ranked amongst the top U.S. cities as far as first-time home buyer, having the ability to be first-time home buyers. So with that, and we being that low in economic mobility, I found a gap there. And the gap comes from, hey, we need to offer education to those people who are trying to get into lower, moderate class neighborhoods. So
I was doing some research on this, and one of the areas with the whole house buying market, whole mortgage area, with the lack of literacy that is there, is also kind of connected to the lack of knowing what can and what can't be given or earned. That is, what can't be earned, what is achievable, what really is the price of a home, what really can be afforded. As so many have talked about, renting was probably more affordable. Do you agree with that statement, that it's more affordable to rent than it is to actually buy?
I will not agree with that. With a capital not. There, right now, just talking about Indianapolis, since we're on that subject, your average, we're 26% lower than the average median price of house buying. So with that being said, the houses here in Indianapolis are more affordable, or there in Indianapolis are more affordable. In addition to that, as far as the average median income being about around between $68,000 and $70,000, you know, it's a perfect match. But yet still, it's not the it's just due to the fact there's a lack of education.
So with that lack of education, there are some people in the African American community and outside of it who probably have come to you trying to get that home loan for a house, and there were some things that kept them from being able to be approved. What are some of those factors, and what can be done about that?
Okay, so pretty much what I would say is that though there are 4 factors that are involved. You have your credit, of course, and that's where everyone knows. You have your income, okay? You have your job stability, and then you have your assets, okay? And let's just go ahead and just take them one by one. With credit, you know, it can vary from lender to lender, but overall, you have to appear that you have credit worthiness, or the willingness or the ability to repay this loan. So what they look at is, you're only as good as your history. And with your credit, that you can consider that as your immediate history. What I would say, credit, making sure that you pay your bills on time is the main and the most important thing that you can ever do. Having a 30-day late, really running up against that day 28, day 29 is very, very dangerous. And as a matter of fact, a 30-day late has greater weight than a 60 or a 90-day late, especially if you have not been in a series of being late. You go late for a 30-day on your car note, it's going to really hit you hard as far as your numbers are concerned.
Why is that different, Fron? Why is it a bigger impact for a 30-day?
My guess is because the likelihood of it is more likely to happen. So they are prepared to look at it. They're prepared to address it a lot more harsher. So it could be it'll be a stiffer penalty score wise in comparison to a 60 or 90 day.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that from experience, that happened to me actually recently. A few months ago, I was about the car thing, because I check my credit on Credit Karma all the time. I'm obsessed with it. But I had up an automatic deduct, from my car note for the bank to take the money out. Something happened; it stopped working, and my credit score almost dropped 200 points. Okay. It was crazy. I mean, it freaked me out. It was like almost 200 points it dropped after maybe three late payments, or 3 payments that I had missed. So, yeah, that was that. I was shocked by that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, to be very honest with you, and this is something, there's no blow to Credit Karma or any of those websites that offer like your free credit scores. You have to be very mindful on, and take those somewhat with a grain of salt. And the reason being is because with credit, there are 2 schools of thought with the Credit Karma as in comparison to what it is that we pull at my job. There's the Vantage 8 score or something similar to that, but with us, we usually pull a FICO Series 4, which actually 2 of your major hitters in town as far as credit pulling, CBC Innovis and Credit Plus, are really looking at. And that's pretty much across the lending board here. If not the U.S., Indianapolis is the U.S., So what I'm saying to you as far as like Credit Karma, any place, here's a rule of thumb. Any place that offers free credit scores or things of that nature, make sure you do your research, okay? Because just as an example, when I was dealing with financial hardship, I, building my credit in the process, hey, I was staying at 635, and, I'm doing all the necessary right things, and I'm looking at my Credit Karma every month, if not every week, just to see if there has been any change or fluctuation in the scores. But I'm right there. I'm just right there, And it came to a point where, hey, the rubber met the road, and, it was time for me to go and strike out and go with the best thing I could and just step out on faith. And I pulled my credit. I had my loan officer to pull my credit score, and to come to find out it was not 70, 75, but it was actually 80 points higher than what it was that they had for Credit Karma. Yeah. So, I kind of, went back in my mind like, hey, how does that work? How can this be so? Well, we look at two things. Number one, we look at the fact of they may not report on time, okay? And if they do report, you may, good or bad, you may not actually receive, that until later down the line. And with that being said, the second thing, well, I'll leave that one alone. Like I said, we're not bashing, okay? But the second thing, as far as the credit score is concerned, it's only good and as accurate as any bad credit that's coming on there. Okay, so with that being said, be very mindful of your Credit Karmas. Be very mindful of some of the other places that offer free credit scores and just give you credit scores, because 9 times out of 10 there may be a huge gap in what it is. You think you're at 717, but realistically you're about around 597.
Wow, man, I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's important. I mean, credit is extremely important if you want to have ownership of home, car. So yeah, apartment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
So I always say, as a general rule of thumb, this is Michael. You can't see me because I can't get my camera to pop up right now, but I'll figure that one out.
We know it's you, Rainwater. We know it's you.
I always say, as a general rule of thumb, and this goes for Facebook, for any apps on your phone, Credit Karma. If it's free, you're the product. You always got to keep that in mind. The company doesn't do anything free for no reason.
Right.
So keep that in the back of your mind.
I love that way of thinking. So, Fron, dealing with the last thing ever with the credit before we move on to your next factor there. If I were someone who had been rebuilding my credit and I was looking to purchase a house, what would be the score that I will be aiming for?
I will put it to you like this. That is lender specific, because you have some banking institutions that, go as far low as 660. You have some that I've seen that are at 580. You have some at 620. With my institution, your bare bones minimum need to be at 620.
So 620 is the goal that you're aiming for. But of course, they're not just looking there at just your credit score. What's another factor?
Another factor would be your income. Now, the fact that you have income, there's incomes, so many different streams of that. And, it could be you're a trucker getting paid on an hourly or on the mile. You could be a foster parent receiving foster income from the state or SSI disability. You could be a regular W-2 employee. You could be a 1099 employee. All of these are acceptable means of income with a certain stipulation. As you know, COVID-19 is no joke. And there has been some stipulations that have been placed saying, hey, we like the fact that you have income, but have you been affected? That's another question that we ask. Have you been affected by COVID-19? in these past few months, have it affected your income? And, yes, we had furlough for maybe 30 days or something like that. Where are you now? We're here. We need to know these things so we can make a safe assessment saying that, hey, you are still, you're still risk qualified in order to handle that level of debt.
And that's a good point you bring up about COVID-19. I just want to raise for any of our viewers here who may not know that the African American community has a higher chance and rate on getting COVID-19 and to the point that it would lead to death or a lengthy period away from work. So there's literacy that needs to go along with also knowing, audience, the ramifications of not protecting yourself with the COVID-19, in which if you have some financial goals on getting this house or whatever the case may be, that could be stymied because of some of these COVID-19 factors with the diabetes that we have, the high blood pressure that we have, the higher chance of having the heart disease that then also affects in those areas and so on and so forth. So I can see how COVID will connect to income and that credit score still might not be good enough to get them over the hump. So then let's say that the income's great. Mm-hmm. Let's say that the credit score has now gotten great because they've been in a rebuilding process, mm-hmm. but it's been about a year since they had a bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What can happen here?
So what can actually happen there is that it depends on the lender. But with majority of it, the bankruptcy can actually cause you to be denied in some cases, or it can actually postpone, depends on how close to that second year you are.
Gotcha. So second year, meaning that there has to be 2 years that you've been free of that bankruptcy being...
That is correct.
Okay.
According to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and you don't know these people, this is not auntie and uncle. I call them as a joke. But these are two investors that pretty much gives the authorization where banks would actually receive that level of funding to give to you as the home buyer. Your bare minimum, you have to be out of bankruptcy for at least 2 years in order to qualify for a house. And that's not from, hey, I'm running out to go and do a bankruptcy right now. It's from the 2 years from discharge.
Gotcha.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to share a really interesting statistic on the point of income, because I think part of what we talk about here on Race Talk is we really want to identify some of the disparities that are going on in the system. And it's not for the purposes of arguing. It's not for to say why. I'm not here to say why. But I think it's real important that people understand some of these important numbers and these facts. So I'm going to steal the screen here for a second. Now, this is from the Economic Policy Institute. It's a nonprofit think tank, and they do a lot of analysis of data for economic policies, and it goes to Congress and to other members to just kind of show them what's going on in the country. Now, I want everyone to pay attention to this real median household income by race and ethnicity, because we're talking about really what redlining is kind of community segregation. It's keeping groups of people in certain areas by qualifying them for home loans based on differing criterias to some degree. And I'm kind of grossly oversimplifying, but that's the general idea. Now notice, by race and ethnicity, this was going up to 2018, and this was released after the analysis was done September 11, 2019. So in 2018, the median household income for whites in America was $70,642. Compare that to the median income for Black Americans of $41,692. Just looking at the median incomes, you can kind of start to see this disparity here. And I'm not getting into the why, but just keeping in mind that knowing that income is one of the 4 major factors in qualifying for homeownership, and that dictates where people end up in certain communities. This is a pretty concerning number from 2018. So I just wanted to point that out for anybody who needs a little bit of the data to kind of make their own conclusions and draw some from it. So that was all I had.
And with financial literacy, it is important to know that factor right there in and of itself. As I started rereading the book that you've seen me promote so many times again on here, and that I know several of our viewers have purchased here, talking about To Make a World Anew, A History of African Americans to 1880. And one of the things that I was reminded of is that wealth is really attained a lot through ownership, being able to own. And we know that after the Civil War, with the Reconstruction, it's supposed to have been that, I think, 10 acres and a mule, whatever is supposed to happen for former slaves. It didn't happen. There's nothing we can do about that back then, right? But with financial literacy right now, there is something that we can do to get our quote unquote 10 acres and a mule. And so credit score, income.
Close the gap.
Close that gap. What do we have here for their number 3 there?
Also with that, and I can go ahead and move on to that third quadrant portion. That would be your assets. Okay. One thing that I will say is that even though, and I really appreciate you, Mr. Rainwater, for explaining the disparities of income amongst African Americans. There's another thing that's out there where we are the highest consumers as African Americans. Okay, so basically everything that we earn, we pretty much spend. Okay, so
that's going to affect your assets.
Oh yeah, that could definitely affect your assets. We're more interested in going after the car as opposed to going after the house, or clothes or whatever other materialistic thing it is. But here's the thing. It's definitely about changing your mindset. You cannot go in good faith thinking that you're going to obtain $130,000, $140,000 house and you only have $500 saved up in both checking and savings. You are not going to obtain that same price house without, and every year you're taking a withdrawal your 401k just because it's cool.
So can you tell us a little bit then, Frank, because that's pretty interesting. When I am trying to apply for that home loan, what is the amount of money that is usually supposed to be in the bank accounts and stay there until that closing has happened?
Depends on the price of the home. I guess we can get into the fact that there's several different fees that are associated with closing costs. You have your down payment, okay, which in some cases you have 3.5%, 3%, all the way up to 20% on a regular conventional loan, okay. But with that, you also have your lender costs, or basically the raw nuts and bolts of what it costs to originate that loan. You have your third-party fees, your vendors, like paying the credit report company and the appraiser from coming out to the house to go and give you an appraisal to make sure, and then we also have the title fees, or the title costs. There's title companies that are looking to make sure that when you take possession of that house, they have done the due diligence on that house checking it out, making sure that there's no liens, no judgments against it that can actually come and attach itself to you and cause you to have further bad debt. Okay, so you have your loan amount, you have your lender's costs, you have third parties costs, and you have your title costs. That's all wrapped up into one. That can average as low as $1,800. I've seen them as much as $4,000. But you know, these are some of the numbers that you need to be prepared for, if not double that. You know, because here's the thing: if you get, let's just say hypothetically, if you get to that $4,000, $5,000 mark for closing costs, but that's all you have in the bank, you're considered house poor. You know what I mean? You know, oh, I'm good to go ahead and get into the house and I can move my stuff in, but you know, I'm stuck on Vienna sausage and top ramen. You know, and you know, and even yet and still, I mean, I survived off of it in college. It's not a good thing, you know, me at 41 eating that on a regular basis, let alone my family who have growing children. I digress.
Right. So are there any particular programs, though, that are out there that do any type of down payment assistance or anything?
Yes, they do. Yes, it is. Indiana Homes, my job actually really focus on Indiana Homes. Is called IHCDA, Indiana Homes Community Development Association, I believe it is. It's IHCDA.com. You can actually go on those programs, and it's first-time home buyer programs that depends on the level of need, can allow you to have down payment assistance to kind of help you out with loan, you know, with acquiring a home or mortgage in this case, and then some that are just good, that are good enough where not only you will get a portion of the down payment, but you can utilize the remaining balance of that allotment to some of the closing costs that can kind of help you out on the back end as well. So
nice. So they also have programs like for first-time homeowners around here?
Absolutely. You know, both FHA, they had FHA, they have VA, a VA product. No longer do they have the conventional, but I mean, they're changing products day in, day out, where they are helping those individuals who meet their requirements in down payment assistance to help them with closing costs and things of that nature.
Love it. Tools for success.
And I located and dropped the link into the chat there for the IHCDA. It's in.gov/IHCDA. It's in the chat for anybody who wants to take a look.
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir. So what would be our fourth factor?
The fourth factor is job stability. Okay. And this is very, very important. I mean, not necessarily, well, all of them are important. Let's just be clear. But this last one, you can't jump from job to job. I'm just going to put it out there. You can't jump from job to job. You know, 3 months you're here, 3 months you're a fry cook. Next thing you know, you're a truck driver. Next thing you know, you are doing insurance. Next thing you know, you're cutting hair, and you want to utilize that. They're looking for stability in what it is that you do. And the bare minimum of that is at least 2 years, or being in the same profession. If it's only 1 year, being in the profession for a series of years, a number of years.
So let's say that there's a married couple. Mm-hmm. They would like a home loan. The husband, he makes about $80,000 a year, but he has zero credit. And has bad work history. He's making that $80,000 a year, but in the last year, he's been at 3 different companies to get that. Mm-hmm. His wife happens to have about an 800 credit rating, but she hasn't worked for 2 years. How would you go about that whole process?
Very carefully. That's
good answer.
Very carefully. There's some things, that you have to pay attention to. You may have had those 3 jobs making that 80 grand a year, but it may have been along the same line of work. We understand, as lenders, jobs come and go every day. You know what I mean? But if you're staying in the same field, there's a likelihood that there can be some grace extended for that. And then for the individual who has a 800 credit score, there are situations out there for that wife who's not working, but her credit score sends you into saying, hey, you may not be working, but you do pay your bills on time. There can be some grace that's extended to that. One thing I will, and I really like this example. There was an individual that I had a couple of years ago when I was working for a different company who had a 810 credit score, and they made roughly about $45,000 a year. Okay. And they weren't able to get a loan.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, there's a thing called the debt to income ratio. Okay. Mm-hmm. And with that, okay, hey, it's great that you make $45,000 a year. Hey, it's great that you pay your bills with that $45,000 a year. But does it mesh with the fact of having a house, adding on a house, the largest investment that you have, and being able to function throughout from day to day? It did not. It did not. So the conversation was pretty much a one-way screaming match with the individual who says, well, I have an 810. Anybody can accept me to go and do anything and everything. But the punchline was that individual had a vehicle that cost them $940 some odd a month.
Geez, Tesla much?
Yeah, no, that took me a while to get my head around too, because I mean, when I was living in Indiana, I was looking for a place back when I was married, and making good money. I had a good credit score, but my DTI, my debt to income, it was actually because of my student loans. Like I couldn't do anything. I mean, I was surprised about how much of a hindrance that was when I was trying to purchase a home.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that, Fron, how the student loans can actually affect someone who, like in Willer's situation, had a good credit score, pretty decent income and all?
Well, I mean, there's been, at one point in time, it just recently changed that, depends on what product you go with. There's some people that give you grace because you're on an income-based repayment plan. You just have to show proof that you have this in place with good old Sally Mae, Navient, whatever you want to call the U.S. education, it doesn't matter. But you have to make sure you have that in place to go and move forward. And they would deduct the amount of what it is that you pay in that away from the debt to income ratio. However, in the FHA world, they don't mind you having student loans, but either you have to be at a fully amortized payment through your student loan company, or they're going to look at 1% of each disbursement. So to make that hit home, if you're at $111,034, they're going to take 1% of that and use it as the monthly amount, which is $110.34.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And considering the average student loan debt now is about 30,000, that 1% can get real high real quick if you're not aware and you're not careful of how to navigate that.
It did for me. Yeah, that was a hard lesson to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So student loans, in total, I mean, just because you have student loans is not to say all end all, but being mindful and talking, being upfront and letting your loan officer know that, hey, you have this student loan. It may not necessarily show up on a credit report that you're paying anything, hey, do you have an income-based repayment plan? If you don't, you need to get one very quick to kind of help you out, or else they have to count this against your debt to income ratio. And you may not be able to afford that $240,000 house. You only may be able to afford an $85,000 house.
Yeah. That's
awesome. Awesome.
Sorry,
go ahead and take the helm, buddy. This is
no. I was gonna. It's just a wrap up question. I want to ask about his show, but I can leave that for the end. I think you're gonna ask about it anyway, right?
Oh. No, he muted himself. I think Wheeler, this has been a really good episode. We are just about out of time. We're a little bit over for tonight, but it's been really awesome. I've appreciated hearing your insights, Fron, and we really appreciate having your expertise, because I think, the purpose, like Donnie said at the beginning, is to talk about solutions to the problem. And I think, it's frustrating to look at some of the issues and some of the problems, but we have to go beyond just getting frustrated, and we have to have these conversations, these critical conversations about what can we do. And if we're talking about the area of segregation in housing and in financial literacy, what we can do is we can begin to help spread the important information, to educate each other, and to share the important information that people who are in more disadvantageous situations need. Because if you don't have that information, somebody who does is already got a leg up on you to get into that house, to get into that neighborhood, to get your dream. And it's not about, where geographically you should, quote unquote, someone thinks you should be. It's about the freedom to choose where you want to be. And in order to get where you want to be, these are some of these little inside secrets that a lot of people don't find out about until much later in life. And it takes them a lot longer to get through this process to where they can be successful in it. So thank you so much for sharing this with us, because anybody watching this should hopefully benefit from some of this.
Oh, absolutely. I wish I would have known this before I went, house hunting. I wish I would have better, knew it, 10 years before I was looking for a home, because I would be, I would have been better prepared to, prepare, Two
things that I do want to share with you guys. With this, like I said, appreciated being on the show. Thank you both. Thank all of you, actually. I will say that July 23rd, I will, along with a realtor partner of mine, will be sponsoring a first-time home buying seminar. And we, the first one was back in February. It was very, very successful. We had our first graduate to actually come out of that. And we're looking to do that again for those individuals who just may want to have just a simple information. They may be well read into it, but not necessarily the laws, the up to date with the laws and everything that it entails in buying a home. So what I'm doing is on the 23rd of July, we're going to have a Zoom call where we can open it up to the people, and it's an informative. We're going to just give the bare bones basic of what it takes for us or for you to own a home. Another thing is I am on 92.7 FM, AM 1310, The Light, on Saturdays from 1 to 2 with Diana Rice Wilkerson and Janice Bradley, the home buying show. So you can always catch me there, or you can just contact me directly, 317-426-7107. And we can talk about a few things about what it would take for you to qualify.
Can you throw that number out one more time?
Absolutely. It's 317-426-7107.
And also, Fron, if you want to give us the link to the Zoom call, we can make sure that when we post our video on Facebook, if it's all right with you, we can post a link to your Zoom call if people want to join.
Absolutely.
So you can just text it to me or Donnie or whoever, or Michael. And okay, cool. And then we can attach that to our when we repost this on Facebook.
Sure thing.
Beautiful.
Well, it's been great having you. Thanks a lot. I learned a lot. So I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, saw me taking notes.
Yeah, I'm over here taking notes too.
And I did drop some notes in the chat for everyone as well. So we dropped the 4 important factors in there. You've got a link to the EPI report we talked about, a link to the IHCDA. You've got the date for the Zoom call with Defronderick, and I'm sure we can come by later and drop on the YouTube video comments as well when this is done, a link to that as well as on Facebook. You've also got the 92.7 FM note and what time, and you've got his direct contact number in the chat as well. So all of those resources are available to you. And of course, if anybody needs anything, just drop a comment in the chat on this video, and we'll get the notification, come back and respond, because our goal is to really help people get knowledge to empower themselves so we can start closing some of these gaps and rise the tide together.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Fron. We really appreciate you. Thank my co-host Willer and our producer Michael, and we thank you guys for viewing. God bless. Let's keep in touch, and let's keep helping each other close the gap.
And we will see you next Wednesday at 7:30 with some new topics of discussion, some roundups from the news, and we'll hope to see you there.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.